We start things off in this hour like we do each week with the editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer. How are you, Dave?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right. We're going to start off, we were just talking about the end of our last hour, so we want to start here. This Your Fight TV event that is coming up.
Oh, you're kidding. Okay, go ahead.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah, it is bizarre.
And we've run through all these things, but there's just some bizarre questions, like how is Ken Shamrock billed on this card already when he has a fight 4 weeks beforehand?
Yeah, from what I was told, they recognize that it's, it's
card subject to change.
It's touch and go, because if he gets hurt in that fight, any kind of a medical suspension, yeah.
Dave, how do you market this event to people? I mean, we've got an MMA fight, a pro wrestling match, a grappling match. I mean, it's so all over the place. I don't even know how you'd market it to people.
Yeah, it was something. I mean, I didn't even know about it. I had heard that Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio were going to do a pro wrestling match for some promotion. I mean, I had known that, but everything else I had no clue about until it was announced.
I'm very surprised that Michael Bisping is even allowed to do something like this.
Well, UFC is like, it's weird because like UFC doesn't allow its people to do pro wrestling, which is a work, but they have allowed people to do grappling matches.
Yeah, like Barnett's done it, and
right.
Sonnen was, when he was with the company, was doing it. But even more so in this case to me, because it's Bisping competing against Sonnen, too, which is, you're basically playing off the publicity they got in UFC, and one of them's still in UFC.
And the other one's suspended from MMA.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I think is weird is like, Sonnen is suspended, but these groups are willing to use him even though he's suspended, because technically, since that fight is not an MMA fight, it's not sanctioned. But still, you would think that somebody who was suspended, you wouldn't put him in a sports contest just because this is, he failed a drug test in a different sport. He still failed a drug test, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like somebody failing a drug test in the NFL and then UFC signing him or something. And it would be like, it wouldn't work. But commissions don't cover grappling, so they can do. The grappling companies can put suspended guys on, and nobody can stop them because they're not governed. But it still kind of makes them. I think it kind of makes them look bad.
It's just an overall weird situation all around, and to me, still, I just don't understand how they're going to promote it and how they're going to get any kind of coherent audience to check this out. When Is there any? Have you heard anything about why they're doing it this way? Like with all these,
they're trying to establish a channel of an internet pay-per-view channel and just an internet internet destination point for MMA fans, pro wrestling fans. Boxing fans.
There's a whole bunch of programming on there, plus celebrities and such as well. Like they're doing a golf competition with the guy who played Shooter McGavin and such. It's a very bizarre. This is just such a huge undertaking to start things off for this startup company. And, there's so many factors when you get into the actual television production of it as well. And even something as simple as, who are the announcers that are going to be able to do all of these different branches of combat sports?
Do you do 4 different sets of announcers, or do you try to find somebody who can do all 4, which becomes really weird?
Yeah, Morrow's not available anymore, and Chael Sonnen is actually working the event.
Yeah, and they'd be the picks, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I would say so. So, or they're going to pay some money for Jim Ross and get him in there,
Okay, well, Jim Ross, which would be a possibility. The thing is that Jim Ross just signed with Fight TV, and they may be competitors with these people.
Yeah, it sounds like a similar kind of project. Yeah.
So essentially, what it looks like is they're spending a ton of money, because I know Angle and Mysterio are making a lot. I know Roy Jones isn't going to come that cheap. Bisping obviously isn't going to work cheap. I don't see that because he's got a big UFC contract. I mean, when you look at this, it's like they're willing to spend a lot of money to put on an event that is, how many buys are you going to get on an internet pay-per-view? I mean, nothing on internet pay-per-view has ever done any kind of numbers because, nothing has yet. That's all. That's how it is.
This is even more bizarre than Bodog.
It is.
Calvin Aaron.
Such a freak show.
Hopefully it'll do a little better than Bodog did.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Bigger names, though. All right, let's flip over, of course, the big story of the week. We've all been covering it, and it is Daniel Bryan. We went into it in depth in our first hour, but coming at it from a slightly different angle, how do you think Daniel Bryan will be remembered and for his impact that he had on the business?
Well, I mean, he was a key component as far as the kind of the modern independent group. I mean, before Ring of Honor, I mean, you didn't really have these great wrestling independent groups. Independent wrestling was usually not that good wrestling. Sometimes there were some guys that could wrestle pretty well. I mean, I like when Al Snow did indies, he kind of had a good rep, and Sabu and some people over the years, were kind of like had independent names, but you really didn't have like this idea of a regular promotion that used that flew in guys and used top indie guys and had really good cards until really Ring of Honor. So, and he was, him and Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels and Low-Ki were really the building blocks of Ring of Honor. So I think that his role in in that aspect is very, very important. And of course, the Ring of Honor ended up spawning a lot of guys into WWE. And his other thing in WWE is him and CM Punk, pretty much, and Rey Mysterio too. Kind of like to a degree, got rid of the size barrier. Not all the way, obviously. We talk about this all the time, but they did open doors to where, WWE. If there's a guy who's 5'8", but is absolutely phenomenal and maybe 180 pounds, years ago they would just say, too small, can't draw on a big stage, forget about it. You'd be fantastic.
Well, basically,
now,
Dave,
no
though, they still say...
as being too small if you're fantastic.
Well, they still say too small, can't draw. They just don't say forget about it at the end anymore.
But they do. But they will sign you.
Yes, they'll sign, but there is that glass ceiling that is still there. So I guess the change is that they will sign.
Change. It's a slow change.
Slow change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Daniel Bryan did win the championship, although, we all know the story about that.
Yes.
I mean, and he obviously should have had, I think we can all look back and say he should have had a much better career based on how the crowd responded to him as compared to how he was pushed, without a doubt.
I think he'll be remembered partially for that as the classic example of not doing what the audience wants and kind of regretting it later on, because...
No doubt. That will probably be, he'll be remembered for winning at WrestleMania in that WrestleMania that he was supposed to be sixth from the top in, that a whole bunch of things happened and he ended up winning the championship because the fans rejected so many different things that they were doing, so they kind of had to do that. And I think the other thing he'll probably be remembered for is just how the yes chant. Mm-hmm. And for that segment on Monday, that was a phenomenal segment.
Yeah, of course. It was very amazing, very emotional. Dave, have you heard anything in terms of what he's going to do now? Like he's still going to be involved? He's going to be like goodwill ambassador for the company, or does he wash his hands of it all and go off and form his family? Have you heard anything about what happens now?
I don't know. I mean, I just know that he was offered. In the past, he was offered an announcing job, and he was offered a training job, and he turned them down because he wants to wrestle. He wanted to wrestle. I guess he's, obviously based on what he said, he's given up the idea of wrestling, so maybe he'll be open to some other jobs. I mean, I think there's a lot of different things that he could do with the company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somewhat related to this, because it is his wife, we have the Fastlane card out, and it's going to be Charlotte versus Brie Bella. I personally can't see a title changing here, but is that in talk, in the realm of possibility?
Well, there's always a possibility because it's WWE, but I don't think so because she's not. I don't know exactly what day. I don't know if it's going to be like right after WrestleMania or this summer or whatever, but she's pretty much going to be leaving at some point this year. So I mean that has nothing to do with him. I mean that was the plan all along, that this was going to be like her last year with the company. As far as going on the road and wrestling, she'll probably, she might remain on Total Divas. I wouldn't be surprised if she does.
So maybe they do give her a little, even a small title run at some point if she's on her way out anyway?
This would be it. It would be a flip and a flip. Like we're talking like the Rey Mysterio and... Callisto thing that just happened, right?
With
do the flip flop,
yeah.
And then you get back into the Charlotte program.
I guess you could do it. I don't know that I would do it though.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, I don't see them giving her a run because I really see it as Charlotte and Sasha Banks at WrestleMania.
I see a three-way.
What, with Becky Lynch?
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah. I actually hope it is. I mean, I just think that Becky gets overshadowed so much.
She does.
And I think she has the possibility of really connecting, and I find her very charismatic when written properly.
I think of the three, she's the most popular, although, I mean, people chant louder for Sasha Banks, but I think, Sasha Banks' matches were really not getting very good reactions, whereas Becky Lynch and Charlotte were the ones who really, like that whole Divas Revolution had been such a flop until Becky Lynch and Charlotte had their program, and then all of a sudden, now it's actually starting to work.
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to Mania with other matches here. Do we have any? I mean, we ask you every week, but is there any more word on? Because Undertaker, it's just so shocking to me because I know they've had so many injuries, but we're in Dallas, we're in this huge stadium. Taker's from Texas, and it's like they don't know what to do with Taker, and he right now just seems to be a bit of a non-factor on this card, which is mind-blowing.
I think it's John Cena, or if not John Cena, that I have no idea what they do because they certainly aren't building any heels up where you're going, okay, this heel is being protected. Other than Strowman, and from what I gather, Strowman is definitely not. Well, I shouldn't say. I was told 99% would not face him because there's always that 1% chance that Vince will change his mind. But it it had been something discussed and everybody thought that it was a bad idea, so that's why it's pretty much dead.
And he's more so dead, battle royal bound.
Yeah, he's battle royal bound, and they want to protect him. Also, they also don't want to beat Strowman right now because they want him to be set up for Brock Lesnar, for a big program later this year.
But is Cena? You said Cena might be. Is he going to be ready by Mania?
I don't know. I mean, in theory, he has no business being ready.
Yeah,
but he's surprised people before.
He has. That's true. But I mean, this would seem to be pretty tight for him to be ready for Mania.
It would defy all medical logic. He's done that twice before.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
he has. AJ Styles and Chris Jericho. We touched on it earlier. Is the long-term plan for these guys to go into Mania together?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Because they've already done 2 matches, so I was thinking that maybe they would be added to the Fastlane card this week, and maybe can you? Well, it's only one more, and then you could do a big blow-off stipulation match. I mean, it certainly could be done. Yeah.
And finally, on a more serious note, Bret Hart. He's tweeted out a picture that he's in recovery. He had the surgery this week. Have you had any contact with him?
He emailed me right before he went to surgery, so that's the only. So I haven't heard from him since surgery. So no, I haven't talked to him yet. No. But I heard, it seemed like it was good news.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that
was the impression. That was the impression that I've gotten, and that's the impression he sent. So hopefully they got it all.
Yeah, hopefully, for sure. And just, I guess, one more thing there. Your thoughts on Kevin Randleman. This was quite shocking for him to be passing away at 44 years of age.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, it just came out of the blue. I mean, you just don't expect somebody 44 who was... Now, I didn't see him, but they told me that Friday, a week ago Friday, which would be 6 days before he died, that he was at Las Vegas, the MMA Awards.
Yeah, that's what John was saying, yeah.
So which I was at, but I just didn't see. There's so many people there, but still, so it's like he was fine and everything like that, and then I guess he got pneumonia or something, and his body just shut down. I mean, he had some major health problems. He had a terrible staph infection years earlier, and collapsed lung. I mean, a couple of things that pretty much destroyed his career as far as being an effective fighter. I mean, if you look at his record as a fighter, you'll see like up to a certain point in time, he was a great fighter, and then from that point on, which was when he started getting after the collapsed lung and everything like that, he really lost most of his fights. So that really affected him physically, but still, I'd seen him before, since at the end in Strike Force. I mean, he was still looked like a freaking freak of nature and all that. Just absolute shock. I mean, the other thing with him, and almost nobody knows this because it was in Japan, but Kevin Randleman had probably more potential as a pro wrestler of almost anyone that I've ever seen, in the sense of he was so great athletically, and he never really trained at it. And I don't know, I mean, I had recommended him to WWE, so I really, but for whatever reason, I think that they were in the mood at that point where they didn't want to hire any MMA guys. So he never really, I mean, like if it was now, I would think that he'd have been in developmental and gotten a deal, because the guy could do things athletically in a pro wrestling ring that I've never seen anyone do when it came to things like jumping or flying or or strength moves, of course. So it's like he, like I said, there was something there that never really, kind of like kind of like his MMA in a way, but where he kind of never got to where perhaps he could have.
All right, Dave. Well, this week I'm sure you'll be covering will you be able to get some news on Randleman in the Observer this week? More details?
Yeah,
okay, great.
Right about that. That'll be one of the main stories, that and the New Japan show from last night, or from today, actually.
Yep, from this morning. All right, That sounds great. And we'll talk to you next week, 1 hour earlier when we're back to our regular time.
Cool.
Great.
Have a great week.
You too. Dave Meltzer, WrestlingObserver.com is where you can find all the good stuff that he does, podcasts, the newsletter, etc.